Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Telegraph Herald More Than the Score. I'm your host Steve Ortman, alongside me, Tim O'Neill. It is the Thanksgiving edition of More Than the Score, an annual tradition. We got to talk a little all-area football. And I know you're all getting ready for your big Thanksgiving feast. And I tell you what, Tim, I don't know about you, but I am ready. I got my Thanksgiving Day napkin. Ooh, baby, let me chow down on some all-area football. Are you ready?
I don't think so, Steve.
Well, first, we got to talk about Western Dubuque football. They made it to the state football championship game. Unbelievable run. Tim, walk us through what a tremendous run the Bobcats made in the postseason.
Well, like you said, just a tremendous season for the Bobcats. They went 7-2 in the regular season. And looking at the RPI and the playoff qualification, they were clearly an underdog as the 13th seed in the playoffs. Turned into road warriors. They went on the road in the playoffs. They knocked off Solon, knocked off North Scott in a revenge game from the regular season, and then they beat top-seeded Sergeant Bluff Luton in the state semifinals. So they got a district rematch in the state finals against Cedar Rapids Xavier. Fortunately, it didn't go the Bobcats' way. They lost 34-20 in just a tough game. They led 20-17 at halftime. They lost star quarterback Kelvin Harris to concussion early in the second half. Sam Goodman came in and nearly rallied the Bobcats back, but Xavier scored a couple of late touchdowns to win it. They finished the season 10-3 and just a fantastic season for the Bobcats. In that game, receiver Drake George ran for a touchdown. Quarterback Kelvin Harris ran for a touchdown and threw a 26-yard touchdown to Peyton Quagliano, but just couldn't get that last touchdown when they needed to.
Yeah, I think myself, you, everyone here, everybody in the state really would have been interested to see what that game would have looked like in the second half if Calvin Harris was playing. I mean, Sam Goodman did admirable job stepping in, but we're talking about one of the best quarterbacks in the area here.
Right. Sam clearly did a nice job. He got the Bobcats down to the 18-yard line and had a chance to go in for the tying touchdown. It looked like maybe it took him a series or so to warm up to it. Coach Justin Penner told me after the game that Sam could have won the quarterback job any week of the season. So it's not like some other teams may have just been throwing an inexperienced and maybe underqualified person into that spot. Goodman was definitely qualified. But the way Kelvin played all year and during that game, you just had a feeling that no matter what, he was going to be able to lead that team down the field. So it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if he hadn't unfortunately gotten hurt on that play.
Yep, and Bobcats. How the Bobcats looking? They're bringing a lot of kids back. Could be another run in them next year.
Yeah, obviously they're going to be losing Drake George, the record-breaking wide receiver. They're going to be losing some stud players on the offensive and defensive line, some really strong linebackers in the middle. But when you look at what they bring back Calvin Harris at quarterback. They bring back both of their running backs. Ben Bryant suffered a season-ending injury in Week 7, cutting short a really strong year. And then Jake Hush came in, backing him up, and really took over and had himself a strong season in about half a year. And so they got both of those guys back, so they should be set to go. Going to need to replace some key players, though, but I got a feeling they're going to be back in the playoffs and looking for another trip back to the Dome next year.
All right, well, congrats to the Bobcats. Terrific season. And that kind of carries right over into the 2018 All-Area Football Team. I know you've been working hard on that. I've been chipping in and helping as well. And, you look at this thing and, Bobcats have that kind of season. Going to be some star players on there.
Yeah, and we just got done talking about these guys, Drake George and Calvin Harris, co-players of the year. It was one of those years, I know I've remarked to you a couple of times, this was probably the toughest decision we've had for player of the year this year with some of those guys at the top. But Calvin Harris and Drake George, just a phenomenal year for those guys. Calvin threw for 2,280 yards and 27 touchdowns. He also ran for 494 yards and 7 touchdowns. A big bulk of the yardage as the Bobcats gained 5,005 yards and scored 489 points, both far and away program records. And then you look at what Drake George did. Just this year alone, he had 74 receptions for 1,165 yards and 11 touchdowns. Now for his season, or for his career, that takes him to 154 receptions, 2,263 yards, and 29 touchdowns. Just fantastic. I think I misspoke. He said he had 15 touchdowns this year, not 11. He owns every career receiving record on the books, and just fantastic season and career for those guys. And like we said, Calvin Harris will be back next year. He broke the program season records for completions, attempts, passing touchdowns, passing yards. He twice tied the record for single game passing touchdowns, and he enters next year needing just 300 yards and 1 touchdown to tie the career records. So obviously a fantastic debut season, and he's going to put some of those records pretty far out of touch next year.
Yeah, very impressive and terrific seasons for them, and much deserved Player of the Year honors for them. And some of the other guys that really stood out all area football, especially if I'm looking on my end, 3 really terrific standout players from Bellevue made it on our first team, and you got to start and end with Hunter Clausen, running back, senior for the Bellevue Comets. What an unbelievable season he had. I know the Comets were just shy of getting to the Unidome, never been there before, and they were really just had a great season that came to a close in the quarterfinals to Pella Christian. But you look at what Hunter Clausen did this season, unbelievable. 220 rushing attempts, 1,620 yards for a 7.4 average, 29 touchdowns on the ground. He also added 16 receptions for 305 yards and 4 touchdowns receiving. So he was just dynamic, and he was also huge on the defensive end. 40 solo tackles, 53 total tackles, 8 sacks and an interception. He was just terrific for them all season. And that Bellevue offense was very potent, and that also included wide receiver, senior Trey Doherty for the Comets. He had a big season. He caught 49 passes for 829 yards and 6 touchdowns. And he also was active from his cornerback position with 35 tackles, 6 interceptions. And he was a playmaker with kickoffs as well, returning a kickoff for a touchdown. And then Bellevue had it on all ends. They also had it on defense, and Junior Tennant was an all-state defensive lineman, senior. What great way to close out his career for the Comets. The Iowa Class 1A District 4 most valuable defensive lineman. He had 48 solo tackles, 62.5 total tackles, 7.5 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries. So great representation there for the Comets. What do you say? Pretty good, huh?
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Sorry, I just feel like we had to break it up a little bit. I felt like I was just rambling on there. So
now you know how I feel on
there's
a weekly
Tim.
basis.
Okay, now back to me. Another player that stood out on my end, Preston Rockford, senior running back for Edgewood Colesburg. The Vikings made it to the Unidome state semifinals for the first time in program history. They won their first district championship since 2006, and they hosted their very first home playoff game this season. So very memorable. And it was a memorable season for Preston, the senior running back. You look at what he did. He was the Class A District 5 offensive MVP. He had 207 rushing attempts for 1,872 yards, averaged 9 yards a carry. 9 yards a carry.
Pretty much a first down every time he touches the ball.
Give him the ball. And 26 touchdowns. He also caught 27 passes for 340 yards and six touchdowns. And you know what? He didn't have much time to catch his breath on the sideline, because guess what? He was a heck of a linebacker as well. 72 solo tackles, 86.5 total tackles, 3 sacks, and a fumble recovery. Just a tremendous season for Preston, and we wish him the best of luck on his road to recovery. He got injured in the state quarterfinals, and just sad to see a player like that not be able to play when the team makes it to the state semifinals. So we hope him the best in his road to recovery. And just kind of that thing at the end of the year, you hate to see big star players, Calvin Harris, Preston Rockford, get injured, not be able to play, and just see kind of how things would have turned out. So anyways, tremendous amount of work, tremendous amount of talent on these all-area teams. So definitely, if you're out there about to sit down, eat that extra piece of pumpkin pie, earn it first. Hop online, take a look at all of Tim's hard work on the area football team, or even better, get a little exercise and mosey on down to your local store and pick up a copy. This is for safekeeping.
Right.
Good stuff.
And let me just point out, when I mentioned the tough decision for Player of the Year, you listen to those stats for Calvin Harris and Drake George, you listen to those stats for Hunter Clausen and Preston Rockford. You can't go wrong with any of those players. So toughest decision I feel like we've had to make in a long, long time here. So Obviously, let us know if you think we got it wrong, but tough to get one wrong here. You can't really go wrong.
And when you're talking Coach of the Year,
tomorrow.
Yeah, that's not out yet, so we can't talk about that. Oh,
No.
Woo! Almost spilled the beans. That one, well,
You can give us your guesses.
That one wasn't easy either. You're talking about Chet Kinnick of Bellevue. You're looking at what John Hoke did at Lancaster, getting them deep into the playoffs. You got Justin Penner, obviously, for the Bobcats. James Rochford, terrific turnaround for the Edgewood-Colesburg Vikings. So be sure to tune in, telegraphherald.com, and in the print edition on Friday. Did I get that right? Friday section to see Coach of the Year.
It's one of these days.
Yeah,
Friday.
sometime. Just keep picking up the paper and it'll be there and there eventually. Anyways, I think I'm ready to go. As far as right now, that was a tasty look at the all-area football team. And now I'm ready for some turkey and mashed potatoes and stuffing and some cranberry sauce. And then you got like the hash brown casserole. And then you got the pumpkin pie. And then they bring the pies from Perkins. Oh, man. What are you looking forward to?
Wrestling season.
All right.
Did you mean Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Food coma. Definitely looking forward to the food coma and seeing how you recover from that paper cut to your eyeball.
Yeah, what you said. All right. I'm ready for some grub. Let's go. Get after it. Get hungry. That's going to do it for this week's edition of Telegraph Herald More Than the Score. I'm your host, Steve Ortman. For Tim O'Neill, congratulations, everyone. A fantastic football season. And have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone.